So another problem with this new project is that the sunroof is stuck in the open position. It's got all the typical rust you would expect to find on one of these SIs with the sunroof. The rubber gasket actually looks in good shape, and I'm hopeful that since the edges aren't completely rusted out, at least the brackets that hold the rubber gaskets in place underneath here are in good condition, because it's easy to order a fiberglass or carbon fiber panel replacement if all the hardware is still good and you can swap it over. So first I'm going to figure out why this is stuck. You can see it wants to move back and forward a little bit. I think it just needs to be greased, but I'm just going to go ahead and pull the panel off and check it out, add some lubrication, and see if I can't get this thing to close. So to slide the sunroof panel off, you actually have to remove the bump stops, which are keeping this on a track from sliding all the way backwards. So to get to these, you actually have to undo these 10mm bolts. That'll let the entire panel slide forward enough. That way you can get underneath and undo the bump stop bolts and take those off. So I'm gonna undo these two 10mm bolts on the other side, and then we'll get the bump stops off. Now with those two 10mm bolts removed, you should be able to take the entire sunroof and manually slide it forward. So now that I was able to slide it forward enough, you're actually able to lift it up. And the bolt we're trying to get to is the one right in the center of the frame there. That little plastic piece is called the bump stop. Once you get those bolts off on either side, the whole panel should slide back and off the roof. Can see some pretty good rust damage there, but we'll take this off and take a closer look. So these are the bump stops, and they keep the tracks kind of locked so the panel can't slide all the way off and keep it in place. On the passenger side, this one I found just laying in the track back here. These ABS parts get so brittle they just break off. You can see this one is cracked as well. There are people who you can find on eBay who sell 3D printed versions of these. I haven't tried them yet personally, but I think I'm about to. You can see the rear ones are still in pretty good condition, but also probably very brittle. Overall, this is on the underside one of the better conditioned sunroofs I've seen. All of the metal gasket brackets are in great shape. This is really good shape. Sure, there's a hole getting eaten through there, and the top side's kind of crap, but like I said, there are people you can find who make replicas of these, that if you have all of the hardware to swap over, you can get a new panel that's made out of fiberglass or carbon fiber coated. There's one seller in the UK. I've used their product on my 89. I can actually show you that now. So obviously the paint's going to be quite a bit different, but this is a fiberglass version of the sunroof panel. It fits really well. All my hardware mounted up pretty easily. The only thing I have to note though, and maybe I just need to put some body into it, it's a little hard to see, but there was quite a bit of a divot in the fiberglass panel. So it wasn't perfect by any means, but certainly way better than the rusted out one I had on there before. So looking at the sunroof even closer now, you can see why this wasn't sliding very well. I'm having to exert quite a bit of force to even get this to slide. This should be a very smooth action. It seems like the lubrication is dried up and it's almost turned to basically a glue now. So the real best way to handle this and get this all clean is to drop the headliner and take the entire sunroof assembly and motor assembly out from the inside. It's actually not that bad to do. You just have to be really patient. Make sure you don't rip the headliner, because it's super flexible and pretty brittle. But the process itself, it's just a handful of bolts and pulling some trim away. So the next step here is probably to drop that. For what we're doing here is trying to restore it. So on the sunroof, basically all the stock bump stops are cracked. So the bump stops here are the front ones and the rear ones. Some of them completely disintegrated, like just broke off. And each one also has a little tiny ring that goes in to the hole to kind of give it a little bit of extra support. I had already ordered a pair of these for my 89 SI. These are 3D printed ABS plastic bump stops that are replacements. What I'm noticing right now though is that the hole for the ring to go into is slightly too small. So I'm just going to use a drill bit and just wiggle around in there a little bit just to make a little more room so these rings snap into place. So then I'll replace the bump stops on the front and back on either side. This sunroof is totally rusty. The panel needs replaced for sure. All the hardware is still good and usable. But for now, I'm just interested in getting this onto the car so the car can get washed. So now I have the rear bump stops installed. You can see I have the retaining ring put into place on the front ones. So those are ready to go on both sides. So what I'm gonna do is this silver track here, I'm gonna grease the inside of this track, grease the inside of this track. I've already sprayed every bit of this, just soaked in WD-40 to try to get this loose enough to slide. And that seems to be working on both sides now. It's a lot freer than it was before. I'm also gonna come and I'm gonna just put like a nice big bead of grease in here so there's no friction, and double check that these are free to slide back and forth without the sunroof in place. And hopefully we get it to seal. So you can see that seemed to fix it. It's 90% of the way there. Feels like it's having a little bit of trouble closing all the way. As you can see on the back side, it wasn't snapping down into place perfectly. And if I walk over to the other side, even this corner is still raised a bit, but seems to want to go down if I just press it. So I don't know if this seal has expanded and is too tight now for the channel, but these seals are extremely rare to find new. So I have another one I've kind of restored using wintergreen oil. So I'm gonna try to maybe swap that on and see if I can get this to work 100%. But for now, the bump stop fix seemed to work and got this thing moving again. So now I can take it and get it washed.